What if the next escalation between world powers didn't stay on the front lines of Ukraine or the South China Sea, but instead rippled through the systems that keep our lives running? Food on shelves, fuel in tanks, power in homes? Which countries would keep working while others collapse? Today we rank the 7 societies most likely to keep the lights on when the world risks shutting down. When we say a world that stops, we are not talking about earthquakes or tsunamis. We are talking about geopolitical shocks that are already on the horizon. NATO and Russia staring each other down, a missile strike near the Strait of Hormuz, cyber attacks aimed at critical grids, or a conflict that spreads beyond Asia. These are the crises that freeze supply chains, send energy prices soaring, and push governments to the edge. In this video, we will use clear, measurable indicators to rank 7 countries that stand out for their ability to keep society functioning under pressure. We will look at stability and security, resilience of infrastructure, food and energy independence, geographic insulation, and social cohesion. You will see why some countries have invested in civil defense while others still depend on luck, and why that difference matters for families from Ohio to Texas. Stay with us until the end, because the lesson is not only about where Iceland or New Zealand rank, it is about what these examples tell us about resilience at home. And if you want more analysis like this, make sure you subscribe to SafetyZone so you never miss the breakdown of the forces shaping your world and your future. Before we reveal the countries, we need to be clear about the yardstick. Safety does not mean beaches far away from the headlines. It means a society that keeps working when stress is at its peak. We break this down into 6 pillars. First is stability, the ability of a government to maintain order without sliding into chaos when outside shocks hit. According to the Global Peace Index, some nations consistently rank as more secure than others, and that difference becomes critical when pressure builds. Second is infrastructure resilience. The NDGAIN index tracks how well countries can withstand disruptions to power, transport, and communications, and those systems are the backbone of daily life. Third is food independence. A country with surpluses in agriculture will always have more room to maneuver than one dependent on imports. Fourth is energy. Nations with strong domestic electricity, whether hydro, nuclear, or renewables, can keep the lights on even if oil tankers stop moving. Fifth is geography. An island far from the front lines has a lower chance of being dragged into a shooting war than a state on a contested border. And sixth is social cohesion, the hardest to measure, but among the most important. Societies with strong trust between citizens and government handle crises better than those divided and suspicious. None of these pillars are perfect on their own, but together they give us a framework to ask the right question. When the world stops, who keeps going? In 7th place is Australia, a vast land with enormous agricultural output and deep reserves of energy, from coal and gas to a growing base of renewables. Australia's sheer scale means it can feed its population and export to others, even if global trade stumbles. Its remoteness from Europe and the Middle East adds a layer of insulation, yet it is not completely detached. Through its AUKUS alliance with the United States and the United Kingdom, Canberra has tied itself to the strategic contest with China. That means the country has the resources to weather a storm, but also the risk of being drawn into the very conflict it is trying to outlast. In 6th place is Ireland. A small island at the western edge of Europe, it ranks among the most peaceful countries in the world and has a strong agricultural surplus, especially in dairy and beef. Ireland benefits from geography, buffered by the Atlantic, distant from major land conflicts, and not a primary military target. But there are vulnerabilities. Its energy system is closely tied to Britain and the European grid, which means a major disruption on the continent could still ripple through Irish households. For now, however, its combination of peace, food, and insulation earns it a strong place in this ranking. And here is the question for you. If you had to choose between a country with vast land and resources but entangling alliances, or a smaller nation with peace and insulation but some dependency on neighbors, which would you trust more in a global shock? In 5th place is Uruguay, a quiet country often overlooked in global debates, yet one of the most resilient in Latin America. Uruguay generates almost all of its electricity from renewable sources, a transformation completed over the last decade that now shields its households from oil shocks. It is also a stable democracy with strong social cohesion and one of the lowest levels of corruption in its region. Its weakness is scale. With a population under 4 million and heavy reliance on trade, it could struggle if maritime choke points were blocked. Still, when it comes to keeping power and basic services running, Uruguay is among the best positioned south of the equator. In fourth place is Austria. Landlocked in the center of Europe, it may not look like a safe bet in times of crisis. Yet Austria consistently ranks high in peace and stability, and its energy grid is anchored in hydropower, which supplies the majority of its electricity. Neutrality, written into its constitution after World War II, has helped keep Austria out of conflicts, and its civil infrastructure is robust by European standards. The vulnerability lies in geography. Surrounded by NATO states and dependent on imported fuels, it would feel the tremors of any wider European war. But if the question is, which societies keep working even as neighbors falter, Austria stands out as one of them. And as we climb the ranking, the balance tilts toward countries that combine energy, food, and insulation at a higher level. The next three may surprise you because they are not just peaceful, they are engineered to keep going when others stop. In third place is Switzerland. Long known for its neutrality, it is more than just a safe haven for banks. The Swiss have built a civil defense system unlike any other in the world, with underground shelters covering the entire population and contingency plans for crisis management. Its electricity comes from a mix of hydropower and nuclear, reducing dependence on foreign fuel. According to Swiss civil protection authorities, there are over 370,000 shelters, enough to house more people than the country's population. But Switzerland is not immune. Its economy is tightly tied to the European Union, and disruptions in trade would be felt. Still, in terms of continuity of society under shock, it remains one of the best prepared states on Earth. In second place is Iceland, a country of less than 400,000 people, yet with energy security that most nations can only dream of. Nearly all of its electricity is generated from renewable sources, mainly geothermal and hydropower, which guarantees stable power even if global fuel flows stop. Iceland also ranks consistently at the top of the Global Peace Index, far removed from any front line. Its weak point is food. Harsh climate and limited farmland make it dependent on imports, though energy abundance allows for greenhouses and fish production to offset part of that need. For many analysts, Iceland is a textbook example of how geography and resources can make a small state more resilient than giants. Two countries remain. One a remote island with surpluses in food and power, the other a society designed to be self-sufficient in a way few others can match. The question is, which one truly deserves the top spot? At the very top is New Zealand, an island nation far from the main theaters of war, with a surplus of food production and one of the cleanest energy profiles in the developed world. Nearly 90% of its electricity comes from renewables, primarily hydro and geothermal, which means households and industries would keep running even if oil shipments stopped. New Zealand is also a major agricultural exporter, producing far more dairy, meat, and grains than its population of 5 million consumes. Geography works in its favor, distant from Europe, Russia, and the Middle East, and not a primary target in any great power conflict. Yet no country is perfect. New Zealand relies on imports for industrial components, fuel for transport, and specialized medical supplies. In a world of broken supply chains, even a strong island can feel strain. But when the question is which society would continue to function in a global shock, New Zealand rises above the rest. Its mix of peace, food, and energy makes it the closest thing to a nation designed to keep the lights on when others go dark. So now, the ranking is complete. But what does it actually mean for you if you live in the United States, thousands of miles away? That is the question we need to answer next. Looking at this ranking from the United States, the lesson is not about packing a bag and moving to Iceland or New Zealand. It is about understanding what makes a society function when pressure mounts, and how those same lessons can apply at home. Countries that keep working in crisis have three things in common: reliable power, steady food, and citizens who trust their institutions enough to act together. America has unmatched resources, from farmland to energy production, but it also has vulnerabilities. Much of its grid is old and exposed to cyber attacks. Many families lack even a 3-day emergency kit, and political division often blocks coherent national planning. During the Colonial Pipeline cyber attack in 2021, drivers in the Southeast lined up for hours as stations ran dry, and that was just one pipeline taken offline for less than a week. Imagine the effect if a hostile state targeted multiple critical nodes at once. When power grids fail, as they did in Texas during the 2021 winter storm, homes go dark, hospitals scramble for backup, and grocery stores shut their doors. Those events were domestic accidents and weather shocks. Now picture the same failures triggered by a deliberate cyber strike in the middle of an international crisis. Supply chains are just as fragile. At the height of the pandemic, empty shelves reminded Americans how quickly logistics can collapse. A global conflict would push that further, disrupting shipping lanes and manufacturing hubs. The result would not be shortages of exotic products, but of basics: painkillers at the pharmacy, parts for cars and tractors, or formula for infants. When the shock hits, you do not care about luxuries. You care about keeping your family fed, warm, and safe. The United States does have advantages. Its farmland can feed not only itself, but much of the world. Its energy production is vast, from oil and gas to renewables. Its defense industry can adapt quickly in times of war. But resources alone do not guarantee resilience. What matters is whether systems are built to keep working under stress. In too many areas, America lags. FEMA still recommends that every household have 72 hours of supplies ready, yet surveys show that the majority of families do not meet that minimum. Civil defense infrastructure is uneven, often left to states and counties with no national standard. And trust between citizens and government is eroding, making coordinated response harder when unity matters most. This is the contrast. In Europe, civil preparedness is being revived as governments warn their citizens of possible wars. In Finland, food and fuel reserves are planned for months, and shelters are part of daily life. In Switzerland, drills and infrastructure give the public confidence that order will hold even in crisis. In the United States, by contrast, preparedness often sounds like a fringe topic rather than a civic duty. The danger is that only after the next shock will Americans realize how thin the margin really is. And that leads to the bigger question for you. If Washington faced a global crisis tomorrow, do you believe American society would keep working smoothly? Or would fractures appear first in politics, then in neighborhoods, then in homes? The point of this exercise is not to crown a paradise or to promise safety. No country is flawless, and every society depends on fragile links that can break under strain. But some nations have built deeper layers of resilience, and that is what sets them apart. Iceland's energy, Switzerland's civil defense, Uruguay's renewables, Austria's neutrality, Ireland's food, Australia's vast resources, and New Zealand's distance and surplus. Different paths, but the same result: a society more likely to keep functioning when the world slows to a halt. For the United States, the lesson is urgent. Geography has long been its shield, oceans its moat, and resources its advantage. But as the wars in Europe and the Middle East show, distance is shrinking. Cyber attacks cross borders in seconds. Supply chain shocks arrive in days, and global energy markets can spike overnight. The question is no longer whether America is isolated enough, but whether it is prepared enough. The countries at the top of this list prove that preparation is not fear, it is function. So I leave you with this. If the next global shock comes not next decade, but next month, will America be ready to keep working, or will it be caught assuming that geography alone will save it? If you found this analysis valuable, subscribe to SafetyZone, share this video, and join the conversation in the comments. Which of the 6 pillars, stability, infrastructure, food, energy, geography, or cohesion do you think matters most for America's future resilience?